Film critics might provide an invaluable filter between audiences and bad movies, but they don't always get it right. In the case of these secretly amazing movies, most reviewers majorly miss the mark. For those that put stock in the Rotten Tomatoes score before ponying up ticket fare, these are the movies you might have missed the first time around. And be warned, there are spoilers ahead. The Cell. Directed by Tarsem Singh, The Cell is not a movie for everyone. But critics who accuse the movie of being shallow and derivative might have been a bit too harsh in retrospect. The film tells the story of Catherine Dean, a child psychologist who uses some impressive tech to enter the subconscious of a comatose boy, hoping to bring him back into the real world. Thanks to her unique set of skills, she's asked by an FBI agent to explore the mind of an unconscious man who'd imprisoned a girl in a bizarre death trap before having a seizure. Now, she only has hours to live, so Dean is tasked with finding her whereabouts. But this is easier said than done, since his subconscious is a nightmare world of torture devices, horned monsters, and living dolls that resemble his victims. It's an S&M fever dream where corpses are bathed in blood, horses are dissected with glass slides, and men have their intestines slowly pulled from their bodies. So, The Cell is full of depravity, but it's still pretty gorgeous to look at, thanks to some horrific tributes to artists like Damien Hirst, Odd Nerdrum, and H.R. Geiger. And the costume game is at its finest, with designer Aiko Ishioka's array of jumpsuits, demonic purple wings, and sadistic sci-fi masks. Better still, the sets are practical, the performances are on point, and the result is something big, bloody, and perversely beautiful. Of course, they didn't all get it wrong. Roger Ebert was one of the few critics who actually liked it, and in fact declared it was one of the best films of the year. The Hunted. When it comes to nail-biters, William Friedkin is one of the best in the business. After all, he's the guy who made films like The French Connection and The Exorcist. In The Hunted, he gives us a chase movie for the ages, even if critics weren't too impressed. The story follows a tired tracker named L.T. Bonham, who used to teach special ops soldiers, but unfortunately, his training was a little too good. After seeing some pretty horrible things overseas, an old pupil has lost his mind and now spends his time picking off deer hunters. So Bonham is brought in to give his student one last lesson. Tommy Lee Jones is amazing as the weary survivalist, a man who knows what he has to do, but that doesn't mean he has to enjoy it.
This yours? Yeah, it is.
As for Benicio del Toro, he's both scary and sympathetic as a man who's seen and spilled far too much blood. Friedkin expertly follows these two as they chase each other down. And when it comes to the final showdown, there are no showy ninja moves here. It's painful, brutal, and in your face, which pretty much sums up the entire feel of this underrated thriller. Constantine.
Oh, I love Constantine.
When Constantine was released in 2005, it had
Great
a
movie.
devil of a time with moviegoers. It lost money at the domestic box office, and critics did their best to exorcise the film from theaters. But those reviewers must have been in league with Lucifer, because Constantine is one hell of a movie. Granted, it doesn't have much in common with Hellblazer, the comic it's loosely based on. But nevertheless, it's an amazingly fun film noir about a chain-smoking cynic who deports demons for entirely selfish reasons. As a kid, he tried to take his own life, and now he's damned for all eternity. So his plan is to exorcise his way to heaven, and he finally gets a chance at saving his soul when a cop asks him to take on a strange case. Directed by Francis Lawrence, Constantine plunges our hero into a world where otherworldly beings spend their evenings at a supernatural club, and heroes blast demons with crucifix shotguns.
If you haven't seen Constantine, it's dope.
Cats can guide you to the underworld. Holy water is stored in 5-gallon jugs, and angels dressed to the nines in killer pinstripe suits. John Constantine is one of Reeves' best performances. The man is playing a mashup between Sam Spade and Neo from The Matrix, expertly blending a snarky sense of humor, detached detective cool, and a secret side of anti-hero empathy. Then there's Tilda Swinton as an incredibly suave
Don't
kid,
forget Shia LaBeouf.
and Peter Stormare as the sleaziest Satan of all time. With all that awesomeness, it's baffling the movie did so poorly. But to all the critics who've hated this film, Constantine has a little message for you. Knowing. There's no denying that Nicolas Cage has had a checkered cinematic career. But faithful fans are rewarded every so often with a legitimately great movie like Joe, Adaptation, Bad Lieutenant, and
Con Air, Face Off.
Though almost every film critic wishes the last movie would disappear in
And what's that movie where he's a gun salesman? That was a great movie too.
extinction-level event, Knowing is genuinely thrilling and poses some interesting philosophical questions.
Lord of War.
When it's not freaking you out, it's making you think, which is why Roger Ebert was the lone holdout who declared it was one of the best science fiction films he'd ever seen. The plot revolves around a rational professor, played by Cage, whose son discovers a 50-year-old document covered in numbers. Despite his skepticism, Kostler realizes these numbers are a code for predicting the dates and body counts of major disasters. And as he digs deeper into the mystery, he realizes something bad is looming on the horizon. With the unsettling appearance of some otherworldly strangers, Kostler begins questioning everything he's ever known about the universe. With director Alice Proyas at the helm, Knowing is just brimming with dread, the same creeping kind of fear you'd find in a movie like Signs. Plus, the film grapples with concepts like free will versus predestination, a deterministic universe versus a random one. You might not like where the movie eventually sides, but it's a film that takes chances and generates ideas that are well worth exploring after the credits roll.
Why are you gonna show us the ending?
You have to do it. You have to, or I'll fire you. Do you understand?
Super. Before directing Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn put his stamp on the superhero genre with Super, an upbeat version of Taxi Driver where the supposed heroes take out drug dealers with pipe bombs and claws. If you can stomach the gore, then you'll find yourself nervously chuckling along with one of the best and nastiest superhero satires. The plot follows a schlubby cook named Frank, whose wife has just left him for the world's sleaziest drug dealer.
Kevin
But
Bacon.
after receiving a vision from God, one involving razor blades and tentacles, Frank believes it's his divine mission to become a superhero, fight crime, and rescue his wife. And accompanying him on his quest is a comic book nerd who has way too much fun breaking legs and bashing heads. Disguised as the Crimson Bolt, Frank uses a pipe wrench to punish both child molesters and people who cut in line. The violence is shockingly hard to watch, and as a result, Super feels like we're watching a schizophrenic madman who's building towards something terrible. And it's that over-the-top bloodshed that angered so many critics. But the violence here is kind of the point. If superheroes existed in real life, they wouldn't be the most stable people on the planet, so Super is a savage and side-splitting response to every comic book movie to ever come out of Hollywood. Which is kind of ironic considering what Gunn would later sign up to direct.
Face the wrath of the Crimson Bolt!
The Majestic. In between Stephen King adaptations, Frank Darabont decided to make a movie in the style of Frank Capra. The result was The Majestic, a film so sweet and nostalgic that it's shocking to think the same director would later make The Mist. But while that grisly creature feature is about as pessimistic as movies get, The Majestic believes in old-fashioned ideas like right and wrong and freedom of speech. The story follows a blacklisted screenwriter named Peter Appleton who gets amnesia and winds up in a sleepy little town where he's mistaken for a long-lost World War II vet. And since he can't remember who he is or where he came from, Peter accepts the story and bonds with his new dad and a wary love interest. Eventually, Peter's memories come flooding back, threatening his new existence. And things get even more complicated when he's called upon to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee. But Peter rises to the occasion and delivers a rousing speech in defense of the right to say and believe whatever you want. Jim Carrey is on top of his game here, delivering a dramatic performance that's right up there with his roles in The Truman Show and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And The Majestic is an inspiring little film, the kind we hardly see anymore. Vanilla Sky. The world of Vanilla Sky is filled with Monet sunsets and Bob Dylan streets, but that doesn't mean you'd want to live there. Why not? Well, it's also a world of crazy stalkers, creepy face masks, and a dreadful feeling that something awful is waiting in the dark. Based on the 1998 Spanish film Open Your Eyes, Cameron Crowe's fifth feature marks the spot where many believe he started losing his touch. Despite its reputation, this Tom Cruise film is a massive mind-bender with more layers than Inception and more twists than Memento. And Cruise is really earning his paycheck here as David Ames, an ultra-rich playboy who has his life ripped apart and then starts losing his mind. Maybe. The superstar really sells David's growing fear and paranoia, and his relationships with the women of the film are masterfully crafted, highlighting two very different sides of the same man. The movie is also filled with some pretty horrific images and some genuinely disturbing moments, from bizarre bedroom body swaps to grotesque shots of Cruise's face. There's also a fantastic soundtrack that features one of the most disturbing uses of a Beach Boys song you'll ever hear. The Book of Eli.
Book of Eli was right. It's pretty good. He's pretty good. Let's go back to playing